Hello and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Friday, July 6, 2018, and this is episode 66. My name is Carol and I'm known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry. The show notes for this and every episode can be found on the blog and also in the episode thread in the Ravelry group. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so via private message on Ravelry, by leaving a comment in the Ravelry group, or by leaving a comment on YouTube, and I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. Sometimes I'm better at that than others, but I always appreciate your comments and feedback, so please keep it coming. It's nice to know I'm not just speaking into thin air, that some of you are out there watching and listening. Welcome to all of you on what looks like it's, so far it's already warm day here in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada. I live just about 100 kilometers or 60 miles east of Vancouver, and it's supposed to get up to, I think, 27 today, but with humidity it's going to feel more like 30 or 31. We're also expecting possible showers or thunder showers this afternoon, which should help to bring the heat down a little. I know it's nothing compared to what you in the East have been going through. I can't even imagine what those temperatures and that level of humidity feels like. So I really feel for you. Saw on the news last night, though, that the temperatures are supposed to drop. So hopefully that's true. If not, try, do your best to stay cool. It's not always the best weather for knitting, is it? That's the unfortunate thing, unless you're inside with some air conditioning. I wasn't sure when I was going to record this week. It's about just after 9 o'clock, and my son just left for work. Our friend who's building our deck, if he comes, is usually somewhere just after 10, so I'm hoping to squeeze this in before that. I was up really early this morning, and I thought since I was up, I could have a little bit of time this morning, more than I normally would, before I kind of get on with my day. So let's jump right in. I have a couple of finished projects to show you, a couple of works in progress, a bit of sewing, and I'll talk a little bit about what I'm reading. And it's been a busy and kind of stressful last couple of weeks, so I'll fill you in with some of the gory details. But there's lots of good stuff happening in there too. It's not all bad. So first project, well, actually what I'll talk about first is last 2 weeks ago, last time I recorded, I showed you the unfelted felted clogs that I was making for my brother-in-law Ed, and so since then I did felt them. I'll put in a picture here of how they looked after the felting process, and then also show you this picture, which my brother-in-law sent to me. My sister was out last week and delivered them to him, and so he sent me a picture of them on his feet and said they fit perfectly, so yay for that. The pattern is Felted Clogs by Bev Galeskas. And also, those of you who've been watching know that I also knit a pair of socks in the orange tabby colorway of the Ancient Arts Meow collection, in honor of my sister and his cat, Misha. And he posted this picture on Facebook with Misha wearing her namesake sock. She doesn't look very impressed, does she? But he seemed quite pleased with those two, although seeing as they are in Toronto, I do not anticipate that he will be wearing them anytime soon. Not exactly sock weather right now. Speaking of socks, I did finish a pair. Actually, I just finished these this morning. I had finished the toes last night, and I kitchenered them this morning. So here they are. Let's see, maybe that's a better way. There you go. These are what I've been calling my gentian socks, because the colorway from Regia is called Gentian, and that's colorway 4458. It's in the Regia 4-ply Colorito color yarn. There you can see the color info. So yeah, not much to say about them. My usual 64 stitch 2x2 rib cuff, plain vanilla sock. I did do a heel flap and gusset on this pair, and I like how the pattern continued very nicely on the as I began the instep. That doesn't always happen really well with self-striping or self-patterning yarn. So yeah, I'm really happy with these. And I think I mentioned before that I bought this yarn with a gift certificate that my son had given to me, and so I'm going to keep these for myself. I really like to have some of these socks in blue tones because they're really nice to wear with a pair of jeans. Now, mind you, I wear all sorts of different, much more colorful socks with my jeans too, but sometimes if I go out, I want to be a little less conspicuous, and so I feel like if I wear something like this, if my pant leg rides up a little, it's not quite so noticeable if I have hand knit or funky socks. I guess part of me should just show them off, but I just feel like this is a little more discreet, I guess. So that's it for finished projects. I'm actually just going to take a sip of water. I've had a couple cups of tea already, and I figured I should wait till I have another. I don't really need to be buzzing that badly this early in the morning. Well, actually, maybe I do. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. My next project I'm going to show you is my Estrantia socks by Helen Stewart. I'm knitting them from Dream in Color Smooshy in the Punky Fuchsia colorway. I'm on my third sock. So I knit the first sock, and it was quite a bit looser than the second sock. Here's the second sock. This is for the left foot because this pattern will run up the side of the left foot. And I didn't really want to knit another sock. I had finished the right sock, but it was considerably looser than this. Sorry, yeah, the right sock was considerably looser than the left sock. For whatever reason, when I started knitting these socks, my tension was quite loose and tightened up as I went down the sock, but it was still different enough that when I put both socks on at the same time, yeah, it just, the right one just felt too loose, and I knew I probably wouldn't wear them if that was the case. And so I didn't take the first one apart yet. I think the yarn is going to be really close. I think I'm going to have to dip into this, like unravel the first sock in order to finish this one, which is my right sock redone. So I've just passed the heel. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to add a little bit of yarn in close to the toes, but that's okay. And it is significantly tighter than the first one I knit, and I know I'll be much happier with this pair. As I've said before, the nice thing about this sock when you are looking for simple knitting is once this pattern's done, it's just straight stockinette until you do the short row heel, and then it's again all the way to the toes, just plain knitting. So it's a good one to just work on whenever. It's low stress. And actually, one advantage of redoing this sock is that I've had a little bit more experience with both this first and only left sock. I've had more experience with picking up stitches where the heel meets the, I guess you can't really call it a gusset because it doesn't have any increase in stitches, but where the heel meets the foot. I really wasn't 100% satisfied with my first attempt, and so I did better on this sock and even better on this sock, so that's definitely been an advantage to redoing the right sock. So yeah, as I say, I think I'll be much happier in the end with this finished pair. And it's, you know, it's just knitting. I don't feel like the first one was a huge loss of time. Yeah, sure, took me as long as it took to knit, but it was time well spent. And it's very, very seldom that I, you know, ever re-knit a sock or feel the need to knit 3 socks instead of 2 when I'm doing a pair. So definitely time well spent. I think the next sock, I can't remember if it comes out in early July or early August. We are into early July, so it must be early August. Hopefully, because I definitely have other projects to work on in the meantime. My latest one is the newest shawl by Helen Stewart for the Shawl Society 3 collection based on The Secret Garden. And this is Ivy Over the Door, a reference to the ivy that was hiding the location of the door into the garden. And as you can see, she knitted in this beautiful green, and this is kind of a beigey, pinky, beigey, I guess, colorway here that is supposed to represent the door itself. And then there's a leaf print in the, or leaf lace pattern in the main part. I know I had shown you several considerations of yarn choices for this pattern the last time I recorded, and when I saw the sneak peek for this pattern, I saw the beautiful green with the leaf lace in it. None of them seemed suitable. And so I did what I really didn't want to do, and I purchased yarn for this shawl. I went down to our local yarn shop, Black Cat Custom Yarn, and I found this beautiful emerald green. This is the Black Cat Custom Sock Luxury Sock in the Cthulhu colorway. And I didn't really know what that Cthulhu, I've heard that word. I guess it's some kind of, if I say mythical creature, kind of some of the photos or drawings that people have done kind of look like scary octopus. So anyway, I'll think of it as lovely leaves rather than scary octopi. And then I found this color way that I thought would complement it really well. And it's kind of this green and purple. I'm not sure how good the light is this morning. As I say, I'm recording early and I'm getting usually get afternoon light in this room, so it's the best I can do. Hopefully it shows up a little brighter on screen once I've recorded, because they are fairly vibrant colorways. This one is called Grapes of Wrath. It's in the same yarn as this. But apparently it's kind of a one-off. I think it was a mis-dye of a regular colorway, but I was happy to snap it up. Thought it complemented this green really well. Kind of reminded me of flowers or something in the garden. I think I'm not even 10% of the way through. This shawl is not going to be done anytime soon. But I have started, so I've begun the first part of this border, just finished this garter stitch section this morning, and I'm about to start the windows lace section. And you finish that, I think you do some garter stitch, and then you switch to the green and the leaf lace pattern. So that's going to be a little while still. But so far it's a fairly, once you get your initial, or this part anyway, once I got the initial pattern set up, that was just doing, you know, it's very easy to follow. Is knitting the knits, purling the purls, and then some garter stitch. So it looks like the leaf lace, it might take a little bit more concentration, but it also looks quite straightforward. You can see it's sort of got rows of eyelets, and I think looks like they're, well, I don't even know if they're kind of joined at the top. I think it's just rows of eyelets. So that should be fairly straightforward too. So that's it for knitting. I don't feel like I really have got a lot done. I did get to do some knitting in the car on the way up to the cabin, or to and from the cabin, this past weekend. And I've been doing a little bit in the evenings and the mornings. But my days have been pretty full, so not much time for crafting. But I did I guess it was last week. I don't know. My sense of time's kind of all mixed up. I decided that considering I was going on a little bit of a Little House on the Prairie pilgrimage this summer, leaving at the end of July, I decided I needed a Little House on the Prairie project bag, and I had scraps left over from the quilt that I had. Well, I made 3 quilts, one for myself, one for my sister Janine, who's going on the road trip with me, and one for my daughter. So I just took some of the scraps and just sort of did a little bit of the quilt as you go quilting on the bottom, and added this for the top, and then this is the the fabric I used to bind my quilt. So I thought that would be a good addition to it. So it's a little bit different than my usual project bags because I had the gathering just going along just at the top instead of partway down like I usually do. But similar idea to a lot of the bags that I've made. And I didn't put a pocket in this one. No real particular reason other than maybe a bit of laziness, and also knowing that the pocket might show through on the outside because the fabric's very pale. And I just lined it in some leftover muslin I had lying around. So yeah, that I will put my travel project in that this summer for our trip. Most likely a pair of socks, but you never know, maybe something else. So that's it for crafting. I have managed to do a little bit of reading. I finished The Secret Garden and thoroughly enjoyed that, and now I feel really in the mood for the Shawl Society patterns and that whole theme. So I will kind of thrilled that as each pattern's released, I'll understand the significance of the name or the design. I also got back to my Betsy Tacy books. My plan is to read the entire series before we go on her trip at the end of July. And I realize I still have 8 more books to go in just a few weeks. So I don't know that that's going to happen, especially because they're getting thicker and thicker all the time and more complex. But I did finish Betsy and Tacy Go Downtown. And as I explained before, this is sort of what I would call the transition book between when Betsy, Tacy, and Tib are children and when they start to mature. I believe they're 12 years, yeah, they're 12 in this book. So the last book, when they're 10, is still written in quite a childish, or aimed at young children. This book, the writing is definitely more mature, and could easily, a 12-year-old could easily relate to it and find it more complex, I guess. They just have such fun. This was, I think I also mentioned at some point, this was a re-release of the series, so they did all these new book jackets or design. And in this book, this is the last book in which illustrations by Lois Lenski appear. So there's let's see if I can find one. Of course, now I want them. So there's Betsy, Tacy, and Tib there. And over last night and this morning, I read a whole other book, but it's a short one. This is Winona's Pony Cart, and while it is not technically part of the Betsy Tacy series, it is based on a character that I think was first introduced in this book here, and is based on a friend of the author's. And so this is Winona's pony cart. It takes place when Betsy, Tacy, Tib, and Winona are 8 years old. So it's definitely a step back in time. What's significant about this book is that it's the first of the illustrations. This is where the illustrator switched. It went from Lois Lenski to Vera Neville. She's got, as you can see, quite a different style than Lois Lenski. I love her drawings. They really are beautiful. But this book itself, as you might expect, is definitely not as sophisticated a writing style as Betsy and Tacy Go Downtown. So it's kind of a step back in that sense, both time-wise and complexity-wise. But it kind of, I think in publication, or I'm not sure why I chose or why I inserted this book in on my bookshelf where I did, because in a way it more properly belongs a couple books ago. But then at that point you haven't been introduced to Winona, so it makes sense in a way to have it after the first book that actually features her in it, or introduces her. My next up is Heaven to Betsy, and this is truly, as you can see from the size, this is truly where the books get even more complex. Betsy and Tacy are going to high school. They're in their freshman year. Again, like really gorgeous illustrations for the book cover. And again, Vera Neville is illustrating. She illustrates all of them from here out. Just such a lovely style, I think, artistically. Another example. I think the first book that I ever read of the series, I think was, I was going to say the next book, but I think it's 2 from here. So anyway, including this book, there are 2 other books that are not part of the Betsy Tacy series, but take place in Deep Valley and have Betsy and Tacy make an appearance in them. Counting those 2, starting with this one, I have 8 more to read. I don't think it's going to happen, considering, like I say, they're pretty thick. Even though it's not difficult reading, it's a matter of finding the time. But I am more familiar with these later books than I am with the early ones, just because I've read them more often and more recently. And so, I'll certainly understand references that might be made to the stories or the characters or the events when I'm at the Betsy Tacy convention. But I kind of really wanted to really immerse myself in their stories this summer or this year. And, life is just happening. That's just the way it is sometimes, right? Priorities. Some things are more important than reading. It's just the way it is. So, in the last couple of weeks, I was trying to think about what's been going on. First things first, our deck, the surface of the deck is all completed, and now the next steps are to close in the posts and the beam from under the existing upstairs deck in order to make it look pretty and hide the wiring for the electricity. And then the ceiling needs to get done. We are planning to do soffitting for it, and had a hard time tracking down what we wanted. Eventually I've ordered something that should be suitable, but the delivery time on that was, I think, 2 to 3 weeks. And I haven't heard, I think I ordered it Tuesday this week, and I haven't heard anything about an actual shipping. I haven't heard that it's been shipped or when to expect it. So we're going to be a bit stuck on that before the electrician can come in and finish the hooking up the wiring, actually getting everything in working order. All the wires been strung, or I don't know if that's the word to use, but we still need things like the plugs attached and the light and fan hooked up and stuff like that. So all in good time. We do have, the next step is to begin the yard work. We're having a drain put in to deal with water issues that we get in the winter mostly, and getting some hedges planted and getting some gravel laid down in the areas that we intend to do, put some pavers around by the deck area, make a patio, and then we are getting a new garden shed, so we need a base for that too. So landscaper is coming tomorrow morning, and we can nail down just what we want and get an estimate from him, and hopefully he's able to start really soon. So here's a few pictures I just took this morning. We are using part of the deck. We've got our old furniture out there, and we like to go sit there in the evenings. We do have new patio furniture, but we're not assembling it and putting it out till the landscaping's done. There doesn't seem to be much point because we know it's just going to end up really dusty and dirty. So now that we're using it, at least somewhat, we're really enjoying it, I have to say. It's a lovely place to sit, but now we're even more anxious to see it all come together. But, you know, can't rush these things, right? As I think I already mentioned, my sister Jacqueline flew out from Toronto to spend the long weekend out here in BC. She flew in Friday. Fortunately, her plane was about an hour or so late leaving. But on a high note, she unexpectedly got upgraded to business class, so that was nice for her. So I went and picked her up, and then we took the back way home because the freeway was really slow with traffic heading out of town for the long weekend. So we made it home in pretty good time, and by the time we got here, my husband was home from work. He'd worked like a half a day, and we loaded up the car, headed up to the cabin. We actually stopped in town first. My mom had made supper for us, so we had dinner in town, and then headed out to the cabin from there. Initially, it looked like we were going to have good success with our water. The pump turned on fine. The water was coming into the cabin. But it soon became apparent there was something going on because the tank was emptying much more quickly than it should have been for the amount of water we were using. And plus, we were losing pressure. So that was something we looked into the next day. And after confirming that water to all the cabins was turned off and that there wasn't any sort of a leak happening inside any of the cabins, we had to conclude that there was a leak occurring somewhere along the line that leads from the pump to the various cabins. So that became the project for the weekend. More on that later, I guess. The main reason that Jacqueline did fly out from Toronto is that my aunt and uncle from Edmonton had planned to be there that weekend. Now, my uncle is my dad's last remaining sibling and his wife, and he looks a lot like my dad and is sort of the uncle. Well, I wouldn't say he's the uncle we've been closest to, but certainly in the last few years since my dad passed away, he's just become, I guess, more special to all of us, and even more than he was before. And so his health has not been really great. He's had been suffering from vertigo lately, and he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make it out. And then his son-in-law, my cousin's husband, actually passed away not last week, but the week before. And so we assumed that he probably wouldn't be coming out. But as it turned out, he and my aunt and one of their daughters and her husband, they attended the celebration of life, and then they left afterwards and did start heading towards the cabin. It was an overnight trip for them, driving. but they arrived Saturday afternoon, and it was really good to see them. My uncle's going to be 90 later this year, and I'm not sure if he's going to make it out to the cabin again. And of course, being in Edmonton, that's a long ways to go to visit. Now, he didn't know last year if he was going to make it out this year, and so you never know. We might see him again next year, but you know, it's a tough time because in the last 3 years, we've lost my dad, his older brother, and his wife. So we've lost 3 close family members just in 3 years. And so we know that just with the age that my mom and my aunt and uncle are, that, you know, if they have more years behind them than ahead of them, let's put it that way. So every time we see them, the time's really precious. I have another cousin that lives about an hour north of the cabin, and she and her husband came down for a visit Saturday afternoon so they could see them too. And then we had a big potluck dinner. I think my son and his girlfriend and 3 of their friends came up and occupied one cabin. So it's the largest cabin, and it has 2 rooms with tables and chairs in it. So we invaded their space Saturday night for big potluck. There was, I think, 19 of us all together. I had a couple of other sisters and their husbands also come up that weekend, and my niece and her husband. So we had a really big crowd. It felt wonderful to have so many people there. Since my dad passed away and my uncle's health hasn't been great, like they used to occupy their cabins for all summer and would have family coming and going. And since that time, things have definitely quieted down because all of us, our generation, have less time that we're able to spend there. So it was wonderful just to see so many people there and have some really great family time. I'm happy to report that eventually the water issue was solved. It involved digging up and finding ways to shut off or cap off the water source to each cabin to try and eliminate the area of the line where the leak was occurring. And when you know it, it was practically at the very end of the line, just behind our cabin, which is the furthest from the pump. They turned the pump on to test, and my sister was out. They had brought their trailer up. She was outside behind the cabin, just outside her trailer, and heard water running and turned around, and there was water bubbling up from the ground. Also very lucky where it was is because it was almost at the place where the water comes into our cabin. The line was quite close to the surface as opposed to being buried deeper further down the line. So she said, if that's oil we're selling, kind of like, you know, the Beverly Hillbillies having oil bubble up in their property, but no, it was just water. And once they unburied the hose, it was actually quite a quick fix. And so by happy hours, Canada Day, Sunday, we had water once again. So that was a huge celebration for all of us. We have outhouses up there, and we do have ways of accessing water, you know, in buckets and things, but that's not quite the same as having running water and being able to have showers, etc. So we didn't have all that when I was growing up, so, you know, I've been there, done that, but you do appreciate just how much you enjoy running water when you don't have it, and how much more work it is to do dishes and everything. Trying to think. Oh, Canada Day. My mom organizes every Canada Day. They have a yard sale at their senior center, and I've worked at it in previous years. They're always short of people, and their group is small to begin with, and it's aging, and then people are away sometimes for the long weekend, so it can be hard to get people to work at it. So 2 of my sisters and I did work at it. I was in charge, or one of the people doing the bake sale area, so I was out on the porch, and it was freezing. Felt so bad. They had Canada Day celebrations at the park, and it's the senior center is right on the way to the park, which is why they planned this yard sale, bake sale, book sale, etc. for that day, because they do get a lot of walk by and drive by traffic. And so just as the national anthem was starting at about 11 o'clock, the rain was just pouring down. Thankfully, I was under cover on the porch, but unfortunately that kind of ended the white elephant aspect of the sale. Packed things away and covered up the tables, etc. So that put a bit of a damper, no pun intended, on that aspect. But my mom said they actually brought in, did quite well on books and baking, and they have a raffle that goes on. So they actually did okay despite the weather. And sounds like there was a big tent set up down in the park, and despite the weather, a number of people showed up, and the kids had fun with the games that were organized. And then they have like hamburgers and hot dogs free for lunch and a cake and stuff. So I think all in all it worked out okay. So we came home Monday, and then we went up to another sister's, the one and only who wasn't able to make it up to the cabin this weekend. We went up to visit her. We had dinner with them so that Jacqueline could have a chance to see her before she went home. So she went home Tuesday. So all of that is very happy. What's not been so great this past week is last Thursday, while I was busy trying to get ready to go away for the weekend, a letter came from the Canada Revenue Agency, which is sort of the U.S. equivalent of the IRS, or not sure what you call it in Britain, or in the U.K. or Australia or whatever. But they are doing a review of my husband's employment expenses for 2015, 16, and 17. When we file our income tax, you do not send in those receipts, but you're instructed to hold on to them in case they want to review them at some point. So we have everything in order. It's not, as far as I know, I'm the one who does the income tax. So as far as I know, I've done everything correctly, but it's extremely intimidating and nerve-wracking and stressful anyway. Knowing that someone's going to go over your everything with a fine-tooth comb, and hopefully it's all been done right. If it's not, they'll adjust it, and we may have to pay some tax that we should have paid that we didn't. I don't think it'll be a really high figure or anything, but I don't know. So I've been working on that the last few days. It's been really wearing me down. Not sleeping real well, hence I think I woke up at, well, it was before 5 this morning. I finally got out of bed, I think 20 to 6, and I've been up ever since. But I decided I wasn't going to go start on that right away. I did some knitting, kind of woke up, and then, as you can see, I'm recording. So once I'm finished recording, I'll get things uploaded onto the computer, and I'll just have to work at editing when I can. I don't think there's a lot that's going to have to be done, just a few segments to clip together and a few pictures to pop in. So not sure when this is going to get up. You may not see it till Saturday or Sunday, but I didn't want to let the week go by without recording. I don't have a lot of opportunities during the day, every day, so, and especially this week. So I'm glad that I was able to get it done in time. It's just after 10 o'clock. Our friend's not here yet, so that's just timing worked out really well. So I hope you all in Canada had a lovely Canada Day, July 1st, and to my friends south of the border, I hope your 4th of July was also very enjoyable. And if it's hot where you are, stay cool. I know on the other side of the world it is probably cooler than you'd like. So if you're there, stay warm. If you're somewhere hot, stay cool. Wherever you are, take care. Have a great week, and happy knitting to you. So I'm not sure when I'll be back. I'm hoping by next weekend, but it'll all happen when I can fit it in. So take care, everyone. See you soon. Bye.